Welcome back to another episode of Alternative Space History. I am your host, So Not the Hero Type, and this is 1963, Part 1. In order to be eligible for the Infinity Project, Pesky Birdie Kerman had to complete at least one more orbital flight before he was allowed to join. Due to having one more outstanding government contract for an orbital flight, Pesky Birdie Kerman, in February, got to go back up into space once again. As fate would have it, all three engines ignited like on all previous outreach rockets, and Pesky was once again being sent back up into the great unknown of space. Preparing him from the rough journey ahead, he held on closely and waited for the command to detach the boosters so he could carry on his journey for the 48 hours in space. As the tanks drained and call for booster separation was commanded, he could feel the separation of both boosters explode off the side of his rocket. Then all of a sudden, he was slowly coasting up into a low orbit where he would spend 48 hours preparing for his longevity training for the Infinity program. Once again, Pesky was back into space, and just like before, he didn't want to come down. After approximately 6 minutes, the base core stage detached and the AJ-10 successfully lit to carry Pesky into his low parking orbit, where the maneuvering stage would be detached and he'd be up there with himself, his thoughts, one way to get home, in a hope that he'd survive. As he approached his 48-hour mark, his retro system ignited. He detached from it, and slowly but surely came screaming back down through the atmosphere. This time, much more ready for the intense G-forces he'd be experiencing, Pesky held on, remained focused, and kept conscious during the entire fall. Now all he had to do was hope his parachute deployed and he'd come floating down safely to the waters of Earth. Trusting his systems in the New Horizons Space Center, he relaxed as soon as he hit terminal velocity. The parachutes lifted, and he came slowly but surely floating back home. Project Slingshot, a directive to complete a lunar landing as a direct descent mission. Wasting less time to catch an orbit, hopefully making it a little bit cheaper, as well as not running the risk of losing connection like so many times before. As all previous lunar lander missions, it was launched on a Dragon 4 and sent up into space to prepare for its journey to the moon. All four engines ignited, and the Dragon 4, reliable as always, slowly started floating its payload into space. As we came up to booster separation, the LR-91 ignited yet again, further proving the reliability of the Dragon 4 launch system. Soon to dump its payload fairing and reveal the new lunar lander system that should hopefully make it to the moon. All reports showing a nominal flight until suddenly a technician pointed out a catastrophic failure with the new system. The avionics unit had not been updated, and as soon as separation happened, the RL-10 ignited and then shut itself down due to safety reasons a moment later. After attempting to restart the engine several times, no response was ever received back from the craft. The team knew they'd have to detonate the payload, as it was on an impact course to somewhere in South Asia. Shortly after 4 minutes into the flight, a command was sent to detonate the entire payload, where the new lunar lander system blew up roughly 120 kilometers in the air over the ocean. March 9th, second lunar lander slingshot model, aka lunar lander number 4, was ignited yet again on a Dragon 4 launch vehicle. All updates and changes have been made to suit the new payload weight, hoping this time we'd actually have a chance to make it to the moon. As all 4 engines ignited, the Dragon 4 slowly but surely lifted off the launch pad like so many times before. The team tense as they waited for the upper stages to ignite and to see if we can remain in control of the rocket and hopefully this time land on the moon. Booster stage separation went off without a hitch as the LR-91 once again ignited successfully to carry hopefully the new and improved lunar lander system into orbit. Monitoring all systems, everything seemed nominal as the LR-91 stage slowly but surely coasted up through the atmosphere. As the payload bearings were released, the team remained hopeful as all systems looked like this was going to be a successful mission as long as the RL-10 engine ignited and carries the rest of our payload into a stable low Earth orbit. Then we will plot a trajectory to impact the side of the lunar surface, where hopefully our new system will be successful in landing. New cameras attached near the bells of the rockets. This is to monitor any possible issues in the near future with the new setup for the lunar lander. And now for the moment of truth. LR-91 stage was detached and the RL-10 successfully ignited. We were now on a course to reach low Earth orbit, where we prepare for a lunar injection. All systems showed nominal orbit. The course was set to impact the side of the moon, and the RL-10 was once again commanded to ignite, or would carry us halfway to the moon, where the Juno 10 stage would finalize the burn. Using the remaining 2 ignitions from the Juno 6 stage, we would first do a minor correction burn close to the surface, and then followed up with a second drainage burn of the Juno stage to prepare a slowdown before the solid rocket booster would do a brunt of the work, and the final stage would have at least a little bit of wiggle room to hopefully land. One of the onboard cameras caught a beautiful glimpse of Earth as we floated away. After approaching a distance at which we determined earlier in the day, the first ignition of the Juno 6 was ignited. During second ignition, we had an issue with system connection, so all we could do was hope that the burn was successful. Telemetry readings when we picked back up a signal showed that the slowdown was close enough to what we needed to as we prepared the landing legs and checked all scientific equipment before getting ready to ignite the solid rocket booster. About halfway through the ignition, the decoupler unit failed to respond, causing the probe to start to slide in a weird circle, reacting in the solid rocket booster, knocking us off course. As telemetry showed we were spinning in circles, we assumed the next instance would be a crash into the ground. As luck would have it, we were able to get the probe to stabilize as it fell down and start the retrograde landing burn, hopefully just in time to make some sort of touchdown on the lunar surface. Trying to conserve what little fuel we had left, the team sent commands to toggle the throttle to conserve as much propellant as possible. As the team sent the final burn command to the craft, we slowly started to tip out of the way. Telemetry data showed we hit and we flipped. Communication was kept, and suddenly all propellant was drained. Science started to pour into the Space Center. Once again, we had mostly successfully landed on the lunar surface. Hopefully the new scientific data will help progress New Horizons Space Center's R&D department for further, more advanced missions in the near future. Once again, Carnassa Kerman takes the helm of a new rocket. Ziggy Kerman patiently waiting by his side, being the first quote-unquote tourist into space. Ziggy, a pilot that retired 3 years prior, was happy to go on the journey once more. With the constant reliability of the Dragon 4 stage, the team was hopeful they'd successfully make it into orbit. Once reaching a parking orbit of around 150 kilometers, the LR-91 stage would be shut down, detached, the launch escape system would be removed, and they'd spend the next 12 hours in space, testing systems like the RCS control, the retro control, and hopefully safely the re-entry control. Extra parachutes have been added to said capsule just in case there's any issues when they are coming back down. At approximately 4 minutes and 12 seconds into the flight, the LR-91 stage shut down, the stage was detached, and the launch escape system was removed. Viewing through their helmet cams, Carnassa and Ziggy tested all systems, and all systems came back nominally. Life support stated they had 3 days they could stay in space. Later variations would carry up to 5 days. No oxygen leaks, and the scrubbers seemed to be running fine. Now it was time to test the RCS controls, as well as enjoy Earth from a view that most men and women would ever see in their lifetime. All RCS systems came back nominal. Now it was time to test the retro flip system and spend the next 12 hours enjoying space. From their cockpit view, both Carnassa and Ziggy intentionally flipped the capsule upside down to get a good look at their homeland as they slowly but surely tumbled through space. Both of them wanting to try the EVA function that was not set up for this mission, unfortunately due to the tourism aspect. Carnassa, however, would have a chance to try an EVA later on in the program, if he so wished to. Approximately 11.5 hours into their journey, they triggered the retrograde lock system to make sure it works. After all tests coming back good, they spent the next half hour preparing to re-enter Earth's atmosphere and once again come home. At 11 hours and 57 minutes, the retrograde engines ignited. All seemed to be going well, as their projected path was coming back down to Earth. And then all of a sudden, some words were spoke that no one in Mission Control wanted to hear. Houston, we have a problem. Yeah, it appears we detached from the deorbiting stage a little too early. We are spinning out of control. As soon as the craft started spiraling, without hesitation, Carnassa activated the top maneuvering RCS ports and slowly started spinning the craft, hoping to release themselves from this now out of control maneuvering stage. After a couple of attempts, he managed to break free and send the maneuvering stage off into the distance. Unfortunately now, the projected path had been changed dramatically, but they are still on their way back to Earth. As they breached Earth's atmosphere, they started to feel the heat and the pressure build up in the capsule. Holding on control with the maneuvering stage until they ran out of fuel, Carnassa grabbed the wheel tightly, promising himself and Ziggy that he'd bring them home safely. As the pressure started to get intense and the trajectory was not nominal, descent mode had to be turned on several different times. Slowly but surely, Carnassa and Ziggy, his sharp as ever co-pilot, cut through the thickest and hottest part of the atmosphere. They were given permission from Mission Control to launch all safety equipment, including the extra parachutes designed for this test. Nothing else was to be left to chance. An investigation to why the capsule separated early was already into effect. Both pilots showed great bravery as they stayed awake during the intense pressure of re-entry. Carnassa and Ziggy looked over at each other as they watched the sky fade away as they slowly but surely tumbled back into Earth. Seeing their speed bleed off more rapidly, they knew it was almost time to release the parachutes. After a successful deployment of the drag chutes, they prepared to let all 3 main chutes go and hopefully come back home safely. Mission Control was relieved as everything after the incident thus far had gone hopeful and exactly how they wanted. Diggy Kerman sweating in his seats. As the parachutes deployed, they saw them open up and saw their speed reduce. They were finally home free. With a little bit of ways to go, they could practically feel the earth beneath their feet. They were home safe once again. At this point, I'd like to thank you guys again for stopping by and watching the video. I hope you made it to the end. As always, I will leave a link to Carnass's Discord in the description. If you liked the content, give it a like. If you didn't, thumbs it down. And feel free to sub if you enjoyed. Anyways, I hope I see you guys again next time when we go into part 2 in 1963 and another episode of alternative space history.